Hi guys, and welcome back to my War Games hobby channel. This is my 5th video discussing the different unit types you can use for Lion Rampant and the advantages and disadvantages of those units. So the next two I'm going to cover are Elite Cavalry and Heavy Cavalry. So usual format, I'll read through the details of what the book says just to make sure I don't miss anything. So let's cover Heavy Cavalry first. Heavy cavalry represent well-armoured, non-noble horsemen in Western European warbands, and also represent most non-knight mounted units that charge into combat. The majority of Dark Ages armoured cavalry are of this type, as are medieval sergeants, skirers and hobilars. They're usually armoured and shielded, but ride unprotected horses. In fact, the ones I'm representing here, the Byzantines, do have some armour on the front of the horses, so they could be, I suppose you could use them as elite cavalry as well, but I'm going to represent them here as heavy cavalry. Although they charge home with less impact than elite cavalry, heavy cavalry still expect to engage their enemies in hand-to-hand combat. As with other mounted units in Lion Rampant, being only 6 models strong, which make them fragile and less effective when fighting on the defensive. Often using javelins at first contact and then switching to hand weapons, heavy cavalry rarely use crouch lances. Again, I've got these with lances, but they don't have to be. Although they can be socially inferior, but most tactically mobile units that would otherwise be covered by elite cavalry. The use of such short-range javelins is already factored into their profile, and we do not count them as range weapons. Heavy cavalry may upgrade to missile-armed, either with bows or crossbows. As noted above, those armed with javelins already have them factored into the attack value, as heavy cavalry javelins are used only at close range. Heavy cavalry with crossbows lose some of their impact in close combat. They cannot evade in the same way as light cavalry can, but representing a middle ground of manoeuvrability and firepower. In reality, mounted crossbows probably dismounted to shoot, but this need not be represented in gameplay. Heavy cavalry with bows retain their strong attacking ability, but back this up with the option to shoot down enemies at a distance. You shouldn't be afraid to commit these troops into close combat, but remember their ability to shoot from distance too. So there we are, looking at the stats. 6 models per unit. They attack and they move on 5+, quite manoeuvrable. They've got a courage of 4 and an armour of 3, which is quite good. They cost 4 points. Their attack value is better than the defence value, that's 5 over 4. They move at 10 inches, and of course they can countercharge, which means that if they do countercharge, they get that attack value rather than the defence value. If they fail to countercharge, they'll just have to use that. So special rules, yet they do countercharge. Upgrades, they can be fearsome and bloodthirsty. We've discussed this before, quite expensive upgrades, but they are there if you want to use them. Mounted bows, that's 1 point per unit, so it's not expensive. A lot of Eastern, in fact it says here, 1 point per unit, add shoot 6+, range 12 inches with a shoot value of 5+. This upgrade represents the majority of Eastern armoured horsemen who may shoot with a bow but are not afraid to charge down their enemies. In fact, on these figures I haven't put bows on, but they could have bows quite easily attached. In fact, I've got them to put on if they're needed. So yeah, bows is a good addition. If you don't want to commit them to a charge, they can stand back and just shoot. But obviously they have to roll 6+ to do so, whereas charging slightly easier on 5+. Mounted crossbows, now this is a no point upgrade, because countercharge is removed, so it makes them a bit more vulnerable if they're attacked, and replaced with shoot, which is 7+ to shoot with a range of 12 inches, and they hit on 5s and 6s. Attack value though is reduced to 5 rather than 4, so their attack and their defense value is the same at 5+. This upgrade represents mounted crossbowmen who primarily shoot rather than charging into combat. Let's look at the elite cavalry. These are the guys that are really hard to beat, and they're represented here by my Byzantine cataphract. Incidentally, I don't know whether I've mentioned it in the past, but if your leader, which I've got represented by this chap here, he's with that unit. Because you don't have separate leaders in Lion Rampant, they always have to be with a unit. So in this case, my leader is this man here. Or it could be the man with the flag, I suppose. It's up to you. So, elite cavalry, the most heavily armoured cavalry in your warband. They rely on the momentum and the impact of their charge, using lances, spears and hand weapons as their horses trample down their grubby social inferiors into the mud. Elite cavalry are big men on big horses, usually cataphracts, which I've got represented here, or European medieval lights, clad in state-of-the-art armour and riding protected horses. They're the type who prefer to charge first and ask questions later. The troop type also includes other well-armoured mounted nobles on armoured horses who prefer to fight hand-to-hand rather than use skirmishing tactics, although apply this sparingly. Elite heavy cavalry are not the most tactically fluid unit in Lion Rampant. They have less interest in enemies outside their charge range, hence their poor move score of 7+, but will chase after any enemy that get too close. So they attack on 5+. However, their good armour and ability to ride down enemies makes them the king of the hand-to-hand combat, alongside the dismounted brethren. Elite cavalry are weaker if unable to charge into contact, but their good armour still makes them a formidable opponent. With the addition of both drilled and motivated upgrades, elite cavalry can become extremely efficient killing machines, but at a cost of 8 points. So let's look at the points here. We've got models in the unit of 6. As you can see, they only move. I've been in games where sometimes the elite cavalry just don't want to get involved. They stay back on the baseline. They can be difficult to get moving. Once they get within a charge range of an enemy, they can of course use wild charge, and they get stuck in then. So they've got a carriage of 3+, which makes them very steady in the field. They've got that armour of 4, which is awesome. They do cost 6 points. The base unit, that is. And as you can see, they've got attack value of 3+ if they attack, and a defense value not quite as good as 5+. But of course, they would always try and countercharge, and hopefully they would always be attacking. They obviously don't shoot. They've got a movement of 10 inches. The special rules, they do get wild charge, which can be a bit of a handicap if you're not careful, because if they have to charge an enemy or try to wild charge if an enemy is within charge range, and if that enemy is in poor terrain, for example, you don't really want them charging into that terrain, but they'll have to if there's no other target nearby. They can incidentally choose which target. If you've got 2 units within charge range, they can choose which one they want to charge. And the counter charge is really important as well, that as long as they can counter charge, they'll always get that 3+ attack value. The upgrade, you can have fearsome and bloodthirsty, like we've discussed before. Too expensive, but if you want to make them really effective, you can spend those points, but they could, but I've not seen them used anywhere. Mounted bows, which is unusual. You won't see many, but again, Eastern European armies probably might have mounted bows. It's 2 points per unit. The wild charge and the counter charge are removed and replaced with shoot 6+, range 12 inches with a shoot value of 5+, so they hit on 5 and 6s. But they obviously stand still. Like they can't do evades. Yeah, they're not like light cavalry. And the other 2 things that are really worth considering is drilled, which is cost a point. This unit is better controlled than most hot-headed elite cavalry, and it removes the wild charge, which is a useful thing to have if you're worried. If you're playing an enemy that goes into woods and rocky ground, you don't want your cavalry chasing after them into that. And of course, motivated, the other thing, which is another point, but this unit has a less of a snooty attitude to the grunt work of small scale battles, so its move becomes 6+ rather than 7+. But of course, if you have both those, drilled and motivated, it's an 8-point unit, so it's up to you whether you use them or not. A design note: elite cavalry armed with bows should be fairly rare, quite agree. This is generally reserved for Eastern and Byzantine heavily armoured men who are on heavy horses, who are equally willing to charge with the lance or shoot with a bow. The majority of bow armoured cavalry are best represented by heavy cavalry in the Dark Ages. Elite cavalry should be mostly restricted to cataphract style armoured horse or warriors. So there you can see I've not actually attached bows to this unit. I might do. I've actually got them. I just haven't put them on. But I think I might attach them. Then they can be used with a bow or not. So they're the last 2 units that I've covered in this series. I will do one more video eventually, not straight away, because there are a couple of extra units you can use, extra variants that you may find useful. For example, camels, you might want to use chariots if it's early Dark Ages. There's pikemen mentioned there, and handgunners as well for the sort of late medieval period. There's even larger units of slingers. So we'll cover those on the next video I do, which will be in a week or so's time. Okay guys, so that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed that. Enjoy your wargaming, and I'll see you again soon.